For about 60 years, almost every household on Earth had a machine that could tune into the birth of the universe. You had one. Your parents had one. And nobody knew. When you turned an old television to a channel with no station, that gray, hissing snow that filled the screen, roughly 1% of what you were seeing and hearing was radiation left over from the Big Bang itself. Ancient light that had traveled 13.8 billion years to land, of all places, in your living room, as static. And here's the part that should stop you. A child born today will almost certainly never see it. Not by accident, we turned it off, on purpose. On a specific date, this is a story about a sound and an image that an entire generation grew up with, that has now almost completely vanished from human experience. And what we lost when it went. It's about the physics of nothing. The day a government switched off an entire broadcasting era, and the strange psychological weight of a kind of silence that kids today have simply never encountered. By the end, you'll never think about an empty screen the same way again. Let's start with what static actually was, because the truth is far stranger than most people ever realized. When an analog television couldn't find a signal, it didn't show you nothing. It showed you everything. Every stray electromagnetic wave its antenna could pick up, all at once, rendered as random dancing dots in a wash of white noise. Most of that came from ordinary sources, other transmissions, nearby electronics, atmospheric interference. But a small, measurable fraction came from somewhere almost impossible to comprehend: the cosmic microwave background. This is the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. Radiation released roughly 380,000 years after the universe began, when it first cooled enough to become transparent to light. That radiation has been traveling ever since, stretched and cooled over 13.8 billion years, until it's now just a faint microwave hum filling all of space in every direction. And your television antenna, which was never designed to detect anything cosmic, was just barely sensitive enough to catch it. About 1% of the static on an untuned analog TV was the cosmic microwave background. NASA put it about as plainly as it can be put. Turn your television to an in-between channel, and part of the static you see is the afterglow of the Big Bang. This wasn't a fringe theory either. The discovery of that background radiation by Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson at Bell Labs in 1964 won the Nobel Prize in Physics, because it was the strongest evidence ever found that the Big Bang actually happened. They first thought the hiss in their antenna was caused by pigeon droppings. It turned out to be the echo of creation. Every time you saw static, you were looking at the oldest light in existence. And almost nobody watching ever knew it. If static was a window onto the universe, then here's the uncomfortable truth. We know the exact date we closed it. In the United States, it was June 12, 2009. That was the day the digital television transition was completed, when full-power television stations across the country were required, by federal mandate, to permanently shut down their analog transmitters and broadcast only in digital. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was a hard deadline, set by Congress, originally scheduled for February 2009 and pushed back 4 months to give people time to get converter boxes. On that day, the FCC received 317,000 calls from confused viewers. For households with old sets and no converter, screens that had shown static for decades simply went dark. And digital signals behave completely differently from analog ones. An analog signal degrades gracefully. As it weakens, the picture gets snowier and snowier, fading slowly into static. A digital signal does something engineers call the digital cliff. It's either perfect or it's gone. There's no in-between, no gradual decay, no snow. When a digital signal fails, you don't get static. You get a frozen frame, a blank screen, or a message that says no signal. Other aspects of analog broadcasting lingered for a while. Low power stations continued, with a final shutdown date that stretched toward 2021. But for the vast majority of people, June 12, 2009 was the day static stopped being part of everyday life. We didn't lose static gradually or accidentally. We set a date, passed a law, and switched off an entire sensory era of human experience in a single afternoon. To understand what was actually lost, you have to remember how completely static saturated the culture of the 20th century. It wasn't just an absence of programming, it was a texture, a specific visual and auditory language that everyone understood instantly. Static meant the day's broadcasting had ended, because television used to end. Stations would play the national anthem, show a test pattern, and then surrender to snow until morning. Static meant your VHS tape had run past the recording. It meant a channel you didn't subscribe to. It meant something had gone wrong or something was over. Filmmakers used it as a tool. The snow on the screen in horror films, most famously in Poltergeist, where a child presses her hands to a hissing television and says, "They're here." That image only works because the audience knew on a deep level what static felt like, that it represented a kind of formless void, a channel to nowhere. Static was also genuinely useful in a way kids today might find hard to believe. It was a sound people slept to. It was used to soothe crying babies because it resembles the muffled whoosh a fetus hears in the womb. The term white noise entered everyday language precisely because that sound was everywhere. A constant, neutral, all frequencies at once hum that the brain could relax into. And there was something philosophically distinct about it. Analog static was true randomness, physical noise from the real world, including, as we've established, the actual universe. No two moments of it were ever identical. It was, in a strange way, the most honest thing on television. A direct, unfiltered feed of the electromagnetic chaos all around us. Static wasn't just the absence of a signal. It was a shared cultural object, one that an entire generation could recognize, use, fear, and even find comfort in. Now think about a child growing up today. When does a screen ever show them nothing? The answer is essentially never. And this is a genuinely new condition in human media history. Every modern screen is designed to never show emptiness. When a streaming app finishes, it doesn't go to snow. It autoplays the next episode or shows you a grid of recommendations. When a video buffers, you get a spinning wheel, not static. When a digital signal drops, you get a clean error message on a solid background. Smartphones, tablets, smart TVs, they are all engineered with one shared assumption. The screen must always be doing something, always be presenting content, always be ready with the next thing. The void has been designed out of existence. A child today has never experienced the specific finality of a channel that just stops. They've never had a screen surrender to randomness. They've never heard that particular hiss that meant nothing was there. For them, a screen is never empty. It's just between things, and the next thing is always loading, always queued, always one tap away. And this connects to something larger that researchers have been tracking. Studies of media consumption show that the average person now encounters an essentially infinite, always-on stream of content, with platforms specifically engineered to eliminate stopping points. The autoplay, the infinite scroll, the next video countdown all exist to remove the natural pause where a person might otherwise disengage. The static screen was, accidentally, one of those stopping points. It was a moment where the media simply ran out and you were left with yourself. The generation growing up now isn't just missing a particular sound. They're growing up in a media environment that has been deliberately engineered to never, ever stop. So is this just nostalgia? An older generation romanticizing a thing that was, after all, mostly an annoyance? Partly, yes. Nobody genuinely misses fiddling with rabbit ear antennas or losing a channel in a thunderstorm. But there's something underneath the nostalgia that's worth taking seriously. Static represented a boundary. It was the edge of the media, the point where the signal ended and the raw universe began. When you hit static, you had reached the limit of what was being broadcast to you, and you were confronted with something formless and indifferent. That boundary had a psychological function. It told you unambiguously that the show was over. It was permission to stop. Modern media has erased that boundary entirely, and it did so on purpose. There is no edge anymore. There is no point at which the content runs out and you're returned to yourself. The design philosophy of nearly every platform you use is to ensure you never reach the end, because the end is where they lose your attention. Static, for all its uselessness, was an honest signal that said, "This is the end, there is nothing more here." We have replaced that honesty with an infinite, seamless, engineered stream that is very carefully designed to never tell you that. There's also the quieter loss, the cosmic one, that 1%. For 60 years, ordinary people had a casual, unknowing, daily connection to the actual origin of the universe, sitting in the corner of the room. You could, at any moment, tune into the oldest light there is. That connection is gone now, not because the cosmic microwave background went anywhere, It's still out there, still passing through you right now. But because we no longer have the household machines that rendered it visible, what we lost wasn't just a sound or an image. It was a built-in boundary, a daily reminder that things end, and an accidental window onto the universe that almost no one realized they had. So the next time you see an old movie where a character stares at a snowy screen, or you stumble across a clip of analog static online, listen to it for a second. Really listen. Because a fraction of that hiss is 13.8 billion years old. It's the sound of the universe cooling down after it began. And for about 60 years, it was the most ordinary thing in the world. The sound of nothing, playing quietly in living rooms across the planet, every single night. The kids growing up now will know a lot of things we never did, but they'll never know that particular nothing. They'll never reach the edge of the signal and find the universe waiting there in the snow. That specific silence is gone, and most people never even knew it was speaking. If you love these kinds of stories, the hidden histories sitting in plain sight, the things that vanished while we weren't paying attention, subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a new one every week. I'll see you in the next one.